Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft lore video. Today we've got so much to talk about. Wrathion has been traveling the world seeking knowledge, and we have just found his journal pages. They contain so much knowledge with deep implications for the lore that could foreshadow future plot lines in the game. Hell, it might even shine both Mechagon and MEDIVH in a new light. But that's not all that you can shine in a new light. You see, our man Wrathion, he is a black dragon, and you can learn about the origins of his kin through Dawn of the Aspects for free on today's sponsor, Audible. You know Audible, they've got audiobooks nailed. They give you one per month, it's yours to keep forever, and you can get your first audiobook free with my link. Blizzard have updated much of their audiobook library, and Dawn of the Aspects is a really great choice. You will hear the Titan Keepers, you'll see what happened to Tyr's Hand, and most important, you'll see the origins of Alexstrasza, Nozdormu, Ysera, Malygos, and Neltharion, with the latter of whom even having a few spooky hints. Life's busy, we don't all have time to sit down with a book and read, and what better way to pass your commute or your walks than 14 hours of top-notch Warcraft lore content. So hit up my link below for a free 30-day trial of Audible that comes with one book for free for life, even if you cancel, but there's loads more Warcraft content out there to get. So thank you very much to them for sponsoring this video, and let's get into the lore. So we are called to the Chamber of the Heart after it's revealed that Ebonhorn is struggling with Old God Whispers. Kalecgos sends us off in search of Wrathion because he suspects that Wrathion might have more information. Of course, Ebonhorn is one of Wrathion's few fellow black dragons, and it's also known that Wrathion has been out searching the world for knowledge. Perhaps Kalecgos even knows more than we do. Anyway, we set off to Pandaria, and we head to the Tavern of the Mists. After defeating two peeking ZOTH eyes, we get some more information from Wrathion's guards, left and right, and they let us read a part of his journal, and then they point us to Blackwing Descent, the next place for us to go. And with the spooky eyes watching, it's pretty clear to everyone involved that ZOTH is also hot on Wrathion's trail. So let's examine this first journal page that we are given. It is page 7, Shen'dralar. Now Wrathion writes about the time where he visited the Shen'dralar. They're a faction that I did a lore video on 5 years ago. The Shen'dralar are a sect of Highborn who resided in Elder Thalas, a Night Elf city that is now known as Dire Maul. Way back in the day, they were working on secret projects for Ashara. They were really loyal, sort of top-end Highborn. And after successfully shielding their city from the Sundering, they found that, well, the Well of Eternity was gone, and that led to a plan where they imprisoned a demon to use as a source of power. Now, this continued for years, through which they were just isolated from the rest of society, tending to their massive archive of knowledge. Things got worse, though, when the net energy gains from their demon plan began to decrease, so with less energy to go around, their king murdered many of his own people, with him and the remaining Shen'dralar retreating to a smaller part of the city, leading to the rest of the city being inhabited by other groups, as we see in the Dire Maul dungeon. Now, they maintained a library that contains vast knowledge, likely owing to the secret work they did for Ashara. They were mostly killed in vanilla, but some did re-enter Night Elf society in Cataclysm, leading to the Night Elves actually becoming mages. Now, Wrathion speaks about how he went there to search their archives, and how he found vague references to the old gods, mostly just being archaeological footnotes. Wrathion notes that the Shen'dralar could not fully unravel the intricacies of the Black Empire's dark magic, but he found that some of them actually dabbled in the void, and this is a major lore reveal. And basically for Wrathion, the lessons that they learned give him hope that the void can be harnessed against ZOTH. Now, this, of course, ties into the recent plotline we've been seeing with Illyria and Locust Walker, of course, as well with the Alliance Void Elves, and it could also nod to Xal'atath. Of course, Xal'atath has many reasons to hate the old gods. They trapped her in that blade for millennia, and she, of course, is an incredibly powerful void being. Perhaps she could even return to help us against ZOTH. Hell, what if she even ended up allying with Sylvanas and we got an alliance of death and void? Of course, that's just one of many speculative directions, so let's move on. Wrathion then says something that's a bit of a nod to his past efforts, but such is the nature of warfare, is it not? Seldom does it accomplish the intentions of its architects, and never without leaving immeasurable destruction in its wake, especially when the Horde and the Alliance are the forces in conflict. Can one ultimately say that victory is worth the price that must be paid to achieve it? Now, this obviously is poking at the current battle for Azeroth, but of course, in Mists of Pandaria, he orchestrated isolated elements of that Alliance-Horde war. Eventually, he betted on the Alliance, hoping they could wipe out the Horde and claim the entire planet, resulting in a unified Azeroth that could withstand the Legion in his view, not knowing that the Alliance and the Horde made each other stronger. Now, when that failed, he then invited in the Iron Horde, thinking that he could use the parallel universe time travel shenanigans to basically give Azeroth a limitless army, and yes, that one did not work out. So, that's this journal page. What have we learned from it? Well, it further reinforces that Void can fight Void and be a force for good, as far as we're concerned. It suggests that the ancient Highborn were aware of the Old Gods and the Black Empire, as they also knew about the Void. Now remember, these are the same Highborn who were doing secretive work for Azshara, and this does lead one to wonder how much Azshara knew about the Old Gods. I mean, she did say, "You watched me for 1,000 years, so you know what I want," during Warbringers, and then prior to that, ZOTH did say that, he'd been watching her, so perhaps they somewhat knew about each other. Probably N'Zoth knew more about Azshara. It's pretty clear though that back then, Azshara was looking into a lot of things, but of course her own character flaws really are what got in the way of her using her knowledge for an overall noble goal. Anyway, let us move onwards. With that read, we then travel to Blackwing Descent, where we find a sleepless interrogator peering into the mind of one of Wrathion's agents. Now, this is the very same agent who we talked to after the Black Dragon Island Expedition quest, the same one who confirmed to us the existence of the Dragon Isles. Now, this agent, when we find them, they are alarmed that, the forces of N'Zoth now know where Wrathion is because the interrogator got in his mind, and he tells us to go to Karazhan's catacombs, but not before handing us another journal page. So in this page, Wrathion talks about his experiences with the Lore Walkers and all the knowledge that they had collected, as well as with the Shado-Pan, who he found to be quite unlike the Lore Walkers, not really being interested in matters that are external to Pandaria. He notes that the Shado-Pan scholars are experts in combating the dark powers of the Shah without succumbing to their influence. Of course, the Shah originate from an old god, so Wrathion deduces that their seemingly stoic ways are pretty key to resisting the old god's whispers. Noting that the Shado-Pan are the continent's sole defense, and that they are sort of disconnected from society in that manner, he says that he feels kinship, something that's referencing really how he views himself as a Black Dragon, as basically being the person who's got to save the planet, but in a way that will isolate him from other people. So yeah, he's got a savior complex, and he's got daddy issues. That's Wrathion. He talks about how the Shado-Pan train to seal away their emotions, and how it's no easy task to stand alone in the darkness so that others may bask in the light. Very fantasy writing there. Now, what do we learn from this? Well, the Old God whispers, they play in one's emotions and their attachments. The Shado-Pan being more rooted in, I guess, Eastern philosophy regarding things like the unburdening of one's attachments. Well, I think that all makes a lot of sense when you think about how it would resist the influence of an Old God. You know, the lack of attachments and the ability to be free from one's own thoughts, that is what would result in being immune, or at least strong to, the Old God whispers, because they tend to rely on negative what-ifs to really get into people's head. Really, a lot of this does seem to be written as a bit of a foil to Western stereotypes, which very much is something we saw throughout Mists of Pandaria. Anyhow, let us move onwards. So after refreshing on our Pandaria lore, we then head to the Karazhan Catacomb entrance, and there we find 2 dead N'Zoth agents and 1 dead Wrathion agent. We find another journal page, this time talking about the Titans. Wrathion talks about his interest in Titan technology and knowledge. This is something that he's always been interested in, but there is a strange angle to it. Of course, in Mists of Pandaria, after eating the heart of Lei Shen, the spirit of Aman'Thul entered him, and he said this: "We have fallen, we must rebuild the final Titan, do not forget." That is something that, of course, foreshadowed the reveal of Azeroth being a Titan World Soul. Now, right after that, Wrathion said that he felt massive knowledge, but that it pretty much all left him once the little episode was over. Now, the problem here is that Aman'Thul's soul ended up in Antorus, so either Wrathion had an unexplained run-in with Iminar, the Soulbinder, or we have a plot hole on our hands. Anyhow, Wrathion talks in his journal about how he believes for certain that the Forge of Origination will be key to defeating the Old Gods, even though he's not exactly sure how. He says that he went to the Vault of Archivon but was repelled by the Giants, and finally he muses on his young age and he laments how the other dragons won't trust him, but he knows that his own dragon Dragonflight has had a troubled past, as he also has as well, given Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor. So we journey deeper into the catacombs, but instead of Wrathion, we find a Faceless, who of course we defeat, because it's World of Warcraft, we always win, and this leads to us getting the final journal piece, page 58. This page details his excitement with Karazhan and its knowledge, and that by using that knowledge, he has been able to create a tonic that cleanses old god corruption and silences their whispers. So that's pretty darn major, isn't it? Now, what's more interesting to me is that he learned a lot more, though, from talking to MEDIVH's spirit. And they talked about MEDIVH's struggles under Sargeras, which led Wrathion to wonder what his, father, I guess, what Neltharion's experiences were like as he was succumbing to madness. MEDIVH spoke about how he returned to the mortal realm and guided civilizations toward defeating the Legion, speaking of how he forged a new legacy. And this is when Wrathion realizes that maybe this is what he wants. Maybe he wants to make amends for the mistakes of himself and his forebears, to have the Black Dragonflight actually fulfill their original mission, to defend Azeroth. Wrathion then writes directly to the player, yes, to you. He tells us that he left these pages with his agents so that we may have them. And he ends it this way: rest assured that when the time is right, you will have my aid in the fight against ZOTH, in the true battle for Azeroth. Yup. They said the title of the expansion in the expansion. We then take the pages back to Mother, who scans them before destroying them, and we are able to save Ebonhorn using Wrathion's tonic, leaving us with a lot to think about and a lot to speculate on. This is going to be exciting. The final boss of BFA. This suggests that ZOTH could be the end boss, as Wrathion does say that ZOTH is the true battle for Azeroth, and this is Battle for Azeroth. Him talking about the Alliance and the Horde warring is certainly interesting, especially when combined with what he learned from MEDIVH. Perhaps, when the time is right, Wrathion will return and advocate for the end of the faction war, sort of as MEDIVH did back in the day, leading into a ZOTH-focused patch 8.3. This could happen, but it will massively depend on where the war campaign of 8.2.5 leads us. Now, while it may be Wrathion's plan, that does not mean that he will succeed in his plan, of course. But there's a lot more. We also learn that it's possible to create an old god corruption cleansing tonic. Now, we don't know how it works exactly, but Wrathion clearly does, because he was able to make it. Perhaps by furthering his research into the mechanics by which this tonic works, we'll be able to find out a more fundamental way to combat the old gods. Although until then, maybe Shado-Pan like Zen and Discipline will be our best defense. But still, this could lead us places, specifically the Forge of Origination, which he does mention, and he believes is key to defeating the Old Gods. Now, the Forge was a key plot point in Cataclysm and Wrath of the Lich King. Originally, the lore was that if activated, it would re-originate the planet, and that would destroy all life and bring it back to its original state. Kind of reminds me of the Halo rings. Now, when Algalon was called down to Ulduar, he deemed Azeroth far too corrupted and attempted to activate the Forge of Origination, but in defeating Algalon in Ulduar, we were able to prove that we had a chance to actually save ourselves from the corruption, and we proved that his mathematics were flawed, his calculations were wrong, because he thought himself invincible to us. Now, the lore of the Forge of Origination was updated when Chronicle Volume 1 was released, aligning its role with the reveal that Azeroth was a Titan World Soul, and indeed just the entire concept of World Souls existing. So, the new lore is that the Forges of Origination and Wills were built after the fall of the Black Empire, with the Forge of Wills nurturing the World Soul's sentience and the Forge of Origination bolstering its form. Should Azeroth fall to corruption, though, the Forge will activate, destroying all life on the planet. So, Wrathion could try to, well, re-originate the planet using the Forge. That would be a level of extremism, though, that Wrathion seems to have left behind. I would maybe speculate that he might attempt to use it to undo the Curse of Flesh or something like that. Maybe that would mirror what King Mechagon wants to do with the Mech Originator. Alternatively, though, and I think this is maybe what he'll try to do, I think Wrathion might try to use the Forge of Origination in conjunction with whatever drives this anti-Old God tonic. Indeed, if the entire purpose of the Forge is to protect the World Soul of Azeroth and to bolster its form, maybe he could use that in conjunction with that tonic to stave off Azeroth's corruption. Going deeper into this tonic is going to be very interesting indeed. You see, Wrathion found this in like Tomes of Knowledge in Karazhan. Well, in patch 7.1, MEDIVH tells Khadgar that he can't fight the Legion because he's got to go and do other things. MEDIVH then flies off to the Twisting Nether. Now, if he's not fighting the Legion, he's probably doing something Void related. Now, after Legion, Khadgar then returns to Karazhan to confer with MEDIVH and also to search the Karazhan library for clues to defeating the old gods. So, what did we just find out? Well, we just found out that Wrathion also searched the Karazhan library, and he was able to figure out this anti-old god tonic. So what if Wrathion and Khadgar came upon the same information, or just were looking for the same information? Indeed, we hear talk of Void fighting Void in these journals. So assuming MEDIVH is still on our side, maybe he went off after the Return to Karazhan patch to learn more about the Void and see how, you know, he could fight Void with Void. Maybe he's dealing with Xal'atath right now. We don't know. It really does seem like MEDIVH is more involved in events than we may currently think. But there you go. The plan to defeat the old gods is falling into place. But I think one thing is for certain. Given how early on we're hearing about this plan, I have to imagine it will not be smooth sailing. So there you go. No doubt we'll learn more about Wrathion in 8.3. After all, we've only seen a few pages of his journal. Do we know what Wrathion was doing in Draenor? Do we know if he was involved with Ebonhorn during Neltharion's lair? We have no idea, and I suppose we'll find out in due course. Thank you very much for watching this video. Be sure to check out Audible if you're interested in picking up a free audiobook. The WoW ones are really great. There's a pretty big library there of the really good WoW books, and of course, they really support our channel. They support things like the new hiring and the game development. I think we really do put that sponsorship stuff to good use over here, and just your support for that is very, very much appreciated. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.